Hey YouTube, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. The last part of my WPL C34 build mod upgrade series. Finally I'm finished. I did the body and did the lighting, and this will probably be the last video of this series. Maybe I will do a running video C34 in the wild somewhere, but actually I guess I'm done with this car. Was quite a lot of work painting and lighting it up. By far most work of this car. As you see, I lit it up, installed a Lameboy's RC light controller to have the headlights, additional front lights, and made 3 steps so that they go on full power after the 3rd click, to have turning lights, everything off, to have hazard lights of course, and of course not only in the front. And on the back side we have rear lights, we have license plate lights, and of course we have brake lights and reverse lights, and of course we have turning lights too. And hazard lights. And furthermore, I did light up the dashboard. Hope you can see it. I will open the doors later. And everything controlled by one single channel, by the fantastic Lameboy's RC light controller. I will give a link in the description. That's not a light controller you can normally buy in a shop, but it's the best light controller I know. 1 click, 2 clicks, 3 clicks, and I can program everything as I want to my liking. 3 clicks, everything off. 3 clicks, everything full on. 2 clicks, 1 step backwards. 1 step backwards. 0. 4 clicks, hazard lights. 4 clicks, hazard lights off. What I forgot to mention, those 2 SMD LEDs as well as the LED of the dashboard are not running on full power on 100%. One of the big advantages of this Lameboy's RC light controller is you can adjust the level of 16 LEDs. So I dimmed those. I guess I used 30 or 40% power only for the license plate lights, and even only 30% for the dashboard LED, and I guess I use only 80% for the turning lights. And making those lights and lighting up the license plate is not that difficult. Those plate mounts have 2 buckets here, and they are a kind of hollow inside, so you can punch them and then put a small LED inside and drill a hole to the back side and wire it up that way. All my LEDs for the Lameboy's RC light controller are common plus, and so I have a common plus and from the back side and single GNU minus signal. Wiring up was not so difficult. I will show you some pics now. Front is easy anyway. You can see here I use shrink tube to secure the wires, and I also used wire mesh on one side of my rock sliders. Inside there sits the receiver, and I need 5 wires for the light controller, for controlling the lights. But I didn't plug them into the receiver with Y cables because there's not a lot of room. There's only limited space. I opened the receiver and soldered those 5 wires directly to the contacts and punched a small hole into the receiver. So only ESC and servo are plugged into the receiver. And you can see it here. Those are that's wire mesh and the 5 wires from receiver to light controller. Where is it? Here's the receiver, here's the light controller. Go from one side to the other that way, and this works really nicely. So guess now everything's clear about lighting. Wiring up the rear lights was a little bit more difficult than wiring up the front lights, and the dashboard light was very easy in this car. So let's talk a little bit about lights, because probably many of you wanna know it. This is one of those fantastic Lame Boys RC's light controller. I ordered the parts, the SMT parts and the boards, and made them myself and programmed them myself. They are developed by a guy called Werner Lane or Lane, an Austrian living in Singapore. Check his YouTube channel, it's awesome. Front lights, 5mm warm white LEDs, super simple. But even those additional front and brake lights, of course not front and brake lights, but front and turning lights, were not as difficult as I had feared. I drilled tiny holes into those light buckets, so I drilled holes in all of my light buckets. I have quite a lot of them, of 2 C34s and 2 C44s, but you should use a drill wise. Without drill wise it's difficult, probably, but I didn't destroy one. And I use super thin wire for this. I use and I love this 36 gauge Teflon coated wire. You can get it in black, red and white, but it's not that easy to buy. You get it from Hobby King or on AliExpress, but of course you can also use copper enameled wire if you prefer. So this was no problem. 2 SMD, I guess I used 603 SMDs, LEDs inside, an orange one for the turning lights and the warm white one. The glasses do come already painted with quite an ugly orange, and it's impossible to remove this orange, but as you see here I simply used Tamiya clear orange X26 and painted it inside and outside additionally with this X26 Tamiya, and it looks very good. So you don't see this ugly flat orange anymore that has come with the lenses, because I guess it's impossible to remove this. And I don't know if you can see it now. Dashboard lights. This was easy. This was easy. I made simply out of plastic such little light buckets, or however you would call this, and that's a dashboard. Fits perfectly that way, and glued it inside. Of course you have to cut out the openings. I simply drew the dashboards on Adobe Illustrator as vector graphics. I drew a lot of different dashboards and printed them out as photos, as photo pictures, and on normal paper. I also tried to print them out on plastic, but this did not work out very well, and simply used those with clear coat, and it works perfectly. The only problem is that those dashboards are not really scale, so you have to adapt the original dashboards. You will find in the internet pictures of the original dashboards of Land Cruisers. There are two types, but you have to adapt them a little bit to fit on the C34 dashboard. And inside I even didn't use SMD LEDs. I used those, what it is, 1.8 mil or I guess 1.8 mil LED, and it works perfectly through two tiny holes here, one white inside, and very easy, much easier than in my Defender, for example, where I used SMD LEDs. Further LEDs, two SMD LEDs, I guess 603 I used, or 402, no, 603, and 3mm LEDs for the rear lights, white, red and orange. And those rear light glasses are made by Simon Says from Norway. He sent them to me, awesome stuff. He let them print out on Shapeways and sent one pair to me. I love this. It's awesome. I would never be able to do this. Thanks a lot to Simon. And because a lot of people would like to have such glasses for the rear lights, because that's the metal bumper, he now made them available on Shapeways. They are not cheap on Shapeways. Shapeways raised the prices enormously, so they are crazy expensive, but that's not because of Simon, that's because of Shapeways. However, I guess lights done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Only 15 LEDs, so not really a lot. Yeah, the Toyota sign, unfortunately, the C34 does come with the WPL sign. I did not get some 3D prints. People told me that's even too small, so I simply printed them out. And so I drew them again with Illustrator as vectograph, made the size I need, scaled them down or up, down, and printed them out, and then used, of course, clear coat and cut them out exactly. And those tiny things, Toyota Land Cruiser, they are even kind of 3D, but still they are only, I print out photos. So here you see where they have been, and cut those as exact as possible, of course using loops and super sharp scissors and scalpels, no, but mainly with super sharp scissors, surgical scissors and loop. I was able to cut it, and with a marker made the borders black. So this looks as it would have been printed, but it's not. But this was quite a little bit of work. I love this work sometimes, sitting and using magnifications for cutting out tiny logos. Painting. I wanted to be my Land Cruiser in a dirty old white, and that's why I used black primer first to prime the whole body, and after that I painted it with flat white. I guess I used also Tamiya flat white and Vallejo flat white. I used my airbrush for doing this, and this gave a not so shiny white. And after that I sprayed the whole body with semi-gloss clear, so no flat clear for the body but semi-gloss. It's called Satin acrylic varnish from Vallejo, And those parts like the light buckets and the mirrors, I did only spray with matte clear after painting them black. I guess I used only black primer for this. A lot more afterwards. I wanted it to be dirty, a little bit rusty, so I used this Vallejo wash, but you can also use black acrylic paint with a lot of water, and to make it look more dirty, and I used different Tamiya weathering masters to make it look used. And I did the rims, I did also only paint with flat clear, and then used different weathering masters. And for the mirrors, as you see, my mirrors are real mirrors, not as they come in flat silver with the kit. I simply used this kind of mirror foil. I will give a link if you want. You can get it for cheap. It's not a silver tape. I do have two. That's real mirror. It's called bathroom mirror or whatever. So quite nice and super cheap stuff, and perfectly suited for making mirrors. Something more to say to the body outside? Not really. I painted all those wipers, antennas, flat black, the metal bumper, license plate. I don't know why it's exactly 1/12 scale, but it seems a little bit too large for me. Maybe I will make a smaller one. I simply drew them in Illustrator and printed them, and on a little bit of plastic. Looks quite okay, but a little bit too large. And on the back side, a smaller one. This looks even better. For the rear light glasses, I used Tamiya clear red and clear orange. So I guess everything's explained about painting and lighting, so let's take a look inside of this car, because I made quite a lot of modifications. First of all, my doors. They did close, but every time I've been running this car and there was a bump, those doors were opening, and this is quite a pain, so I made such tiny little hinges. I hope you can see those. Out of a small screw and a piece of plastic, drill a hole in a small shim of plastic. It's not the most beautiful solution, but I heard some guys did even glue the doors to the body. I didn't want to lose opening doors, so this works fine now. You see, easy to handle, and no door will open anymore during driving. Of course I had to do this on the other side too. It's quite a pain that those doors don't close. Nice solution, but not the most scale and most pretty solution. And now let's take a look inside. So now we can take a look inside. Need some light, and the first thing you will maybe see are the seats. I lowered the seats because the seats, they were not scale at all. They were much too high. This is a original seat of a C34 or 44, and you see I lowered the seats quite a lot, and that way, that's a scale. I checked quite a lot of pictures in the internet, so the original seats are by far not that high, and it's quite an easy modification. You can simply cut this part and then cut this stripe and glue the seat mounts into position again, and that way it's much easier to fit driver figures. So normal 5-inch 15-16 centimeter driver figures will fit and sit much nicer, and it looks much better than it looks with those ugly, very high, not natural seats. I found it quite difficult to glue this plastic. This plastic is a pain anyway. It's extremely difficult to paint because no paint or primer will stick on it, and it's extremely hard to glue. I do have a ton of different glues from E6000, E7000, Shugu, three types of Tamiya cement glue. I have normal CA from Hobby King, different types. I have other glues. None of those stick, but I found that this super cheap glue, it's from Austrian German Konrad, Toolcraft Roped 150. You have three types of Roped glues from Konrad, does glue this plastic, and it also glues silicone. It's super cheap glue, but it's not the best CA glue you can get, but it's the best to glue silicone or this plastic. I think there are some extremely expensive plastic glues for 20-30 euros a tiny bottle. I didn't buy those. I will give the link in the description, but it will be hard to buy for people outside European Union probably, or outside of Austria, Germany, Switzerland, Hungary. And this glue worked. I hope you can see it. I also changed the position of the steering wheel. This was also wrong, so I checked quite a lot of pictures in the internet how the interior of a Land Cruiser FJ40 or FJ45 should look like, and the position of the steering wheel here, it's too high. The original position is much lower, but in a steeper angle, so I also lowered the steering wheel position, and that way the figures fit perfectly inside. Painting the dashboard was also a big pain, and as already mentioned, none of the paints were okay. All of them were easily removable like skin, and finally I found those marker pens, super cheap, from AliExpress. I have silver and gold and white ones, and those worked. So I primed the dashboard before painting it with airbrush. I primed the dashboard with this white marker pen, and I directly painted the dashboard, the silver parts where it should be silver. That's like in a real C34. I painted it with this silver marker from AliExpress. It cost less than $1. And then I painted the interior with my, I don't know, Vallejo white or Tamiya flat white and flat clear. So finally this worked out really nicely, but painting the interior is not an easy job, and it's good that there will be no rubbing or whatever, so for outside parts this wouldn't stick at all. What I also did, as you can see here, I removed those ugly WPL logos. As you know, WPL put their logos everywhere. It's nice, it's okay, it's a WPL car, but for a scale car, why to put this logo here? And this was not that easy. Finally, I couldn't use any filler because nothing sticked, and finally I used also this robot glue and made a paste of this robot super glue from Toolcraft, and used baking soda, natron, and made this, fill it with natron, you know, that's an old trick for model builders, and then put the glue in it, and that finally worked. And then I could sand it, and finally used a little bit of Tamiya putty as primer, so you won't see this logo anymore, but I don't know if I will do this in the next car too. It's quite a lot of work, and of course I did this on both sides. And yeah, that's how it worked out. and you see the right side of the dashboard is also totally changed. That's not scale at all. So the original dashboard that way, that's not really correct. Check the internet for pictures of Land Cruisers, all Land Cruisers interiors. Yeah, and that's what I did. And I guess you see my driver figures, they fit nicely inside. And I guess you wanna know my driver figures. Oh, I hope you can see something. Passenger. And so in that way, with the lowered seats and also the changed steering wheel, but I guess the steering wheel changing the position is only for scale look and not for putting the driver figure inside. That way those figures fit in really nicely. And I highly recommend to lower the seats. And I guess, as always, you guys will ask, what driver figures did I use? And the answer is, I made some kind of Frankensteins. What you can see here, the body, that's the head that belongs to this figure, that's Negan. That's the Walking Dead Series 5 Negan action figure. And the head is, that's the body of this head originally. And that's a Mattel Suicide Squad figure. That's Rick Flag. And so I put the head of this figure on the body of that figure. Fits nicely, works nicely. And this guy with the beer in his hand, the body is the body of this head. And this head is a Han Solo from the Star Wars Black series. That's the figure, but I painted the body. He has a kind of unique form, what I didn't like, so I painted it to make it shine, the trousers to look like a little bit like jeans, and I also painted his jacket again. It was already brown, but there were some uniform signs. And the head is again a Mattel figure, a Mattel Suicide Squad figure, and that's the body. And this figure is called Boomerang, I guess. So 2 Mattel figures, you can get them, I got them I guess from Amazon, really cheap. Mattel Boomerang and Mattel Rick Flag figures. I used only the heads, but I think the size of the heads is quite appropriate for this car. And I used the bodies of a 6-inch Star Wars Black Series figure of Han Solo and of a 5-inch or 5 series Walking Dead of Negan. And of course I put some more scale accessories inside, like cigarettes, beer can, and inside in the back there is a dog sleeping on a bench, but probably nobody will ever see it. We have a huge chainsaw, rifle, some bottles, some waste, and that's it. So quite happy how it came out. Highly recommend to lower the seats. You see how nice or nicely those figures fit into the car now. And if you have problems with opening doors too, maybe you could also make such small hinges. It's really quite an easy mod. You need a tiny screw. So guys, that's it. My car is finished. You have seen the whole building process. I made a lot of videos and I made one change to the stuff I did in my videos. Maybe you can see it here inside. I changed the shocks. And why did I do this? In the video I used those super cheap and super nice WPL shocks. You see they do have the rod ends for the C34, but they were leaking badly after some time, and they were not leaking only on one position. Example here, they were leaking here, and of course I opened them and I cleaned them. There was no chance I could get those shocks keeping the oil inside. I will try again, and I also had similar shocks. One would say that's the same type of shocks. I also bought it from Bango. They are called Euro AV shocks, and I thought they are the same, but they are not the same shocks. They have much harder springs, and on the tiny round plate inside, what sits inside the shock and where the oil has to be pressed through to get to the lower, to the upper position, this plate in those Euro AV shocks does not have any bores or any holes, so you wouldn't be able to use them with oil without drilling some holes inside of those plates. I played around a little bit with those shocks. I changed I drilled holes into those plates, made larger holes in the WPL shocks, and I will try more. I have to find appropriate O-rings, but I could not get none of those shocks keep the oil. They were losing oil constantly, and so I finally did use those shocks. Those are also WL Toys shocks. Did I name those shocks WPL shocks before? Of course that's wrong. Those are WL Toys shocks, the one I showed you in my shock upgrade video. Those are Euro AV shocks. Nobody knows the difference. They seem to be exactly the same, but inside they are not the same, and I guess those are WL Toys shocks too. They are also cheap, and they are keeping the oil really nicely, and I was really annoyed after some time always losing the oil, and everything's full of oil there, so I changed to those. They do not look that scale. I will maybe try one day to modify those shocks to keep the oil, but so far I do not see how to make this, so you should use those shocks probably without oil if your shocks are leaking too. So I'm done. Final conclusion, guys. My WPL C34 Toyota Land Cruiser FJ40 is finished, and I really like how it turned out. What I maybe would change, what I do not really like, is the servo I used. I showed you this servo in the servo upgrade video, and the JX Servo PDI 2506 MG. It works perfectly, but it always makes this kind of noise like Savex servos, so it's fine, it works perfectly, but I would prefer a calm servo, honestly. Maybe you can hear it. Now it's silent, but now you can hear it. Everything else works fine, and now it's time for a test drive outside. So this was my last video of this WPL C34 build mod upgrade series. I hope you liked it. I hope I could give you some ideas. I'm curious what you guys do. If you have some problems, some ideas, some solutions. And you see the car is climbing quite nicely here on my workbench, and it's time to go to the field and make a drive test outside. I will show you some photos I took of the car in the end of the video, but that's it. Thanks for watching. Again, I don't know what the next video will be. I have the C34, I still didn't finish my Willys Jeep with moving driving figure, still didn't finish my MN45, have two Orlandos and whatever. I want to make a test video of brushed ESCs for those small cars. So we will see what will be my next video. So thanks for watching. Obrigado, gracias, dankeschön. See you in the next video. I don't know yet what it will be, but it's sure I'll be back.